my pleasure to welcome you to our first talk of the Triennial, which is Intersections, the Story of Folkestone Mosque. We've got a large panel here today. I'm just going to introduce Remona Aly, who will then introduce the panel. Remona is on her first visit to Folkestone, though she does live in Kent. She is a journalist. She is a freelance contributor to The Guardian. She's a podcaster. She contributes to Pause for Thought on Radio 2. And her interests are particularly in lifestyle, faith, and identity. We're really thrilled that Remona could be here today. And so I'd just like you to welcome everyone in the usual way. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi, thank you. I was going to welcome you, but you welcomed me, so that was really lovely. I'm your host, Remona Aly. It is my first time in Folkestone, but, you know, as Joanna says, I am a Kent lass. I'm from the Medway Towns, from a village called Who in Rochester. And so it takes me longer to get to Folkestone in Kent than it does for me to get to London. But it was a lovely drive, and I've just felt the lovely atmosphere here and the warmth and the hospitality. So I'm having a great time. So it is an overdue visit, but maybe it was a fate, because I'm now joined by a fantastic panel of speakers who are going to talk us through the journey of collaboration, conversation and dialogue and creativity, 5 years in the making, and a vital part of which you've seen unveiled this week with the lantern installation, which is outside Folkestone Mosque, which hopefully most of you have seen. If not, please do go and see it. I'm delighted to be joined by the artists HoyCheong Wong and Simon Davenport, who are wearing the black outfits tonight, and also the architect Shahed Saleem on my far right, not politically of course, who is the author of The British Mosque, an architectural and social history. And we're really happy to have two representatives of the mosque here with us as well. I have Faruk Miah, the president of Folkestone Cultural Centre, and Shaheen Chowdhury, who is the secretary of Folkestone Mosque. So welcome to you all. I'm really happy that you're sharing this time with us today. And now you all know each other really well, and I have only just met you 2 hours ago, but there is one person on the panel that I have known basically nearly all my life, and that is Shahed. So this is not nepotism, but I'm going to pass the mic to him first, because he has a brief presentation about the history of mosques in Britain, and that will hopefully position us well for our encounter. So thanks, Shahed, over to you.
Right, thanks, Remona, and hello everyone. Coming in the back there, happens to be my family, but never mind. I think they'd make more of an effort. Normally when I get up behind a lantern, I can talk for hours, but
you've got 8 minutes.
Sorry, I can talk for hours. Yeah, I've got 3 minutes. Was that right? I'm going to rush through this. So my background research is in the history of the mosque in Britain. So I wrote a book called The British Mosque, and in that I sort of talked about the story of the mosque in Britain. And obviously it's quite a big story, quite a long story. I'm not going to go through the whole thing now, but I think what I want to try and get across is the idea of the mosque in Britain as a building which has been formed largely through the adaptation and alteration of existing buildings, and also a building which has been largely created through community endeavours, so grassroots, community organised, very iterative, very gradual processes of establishment and growth. Just to sort of position the first mosque in Britain, it was in Woking, and this is a picture of it, and it was in 1889, and this was purpose-built, and built in a very kind of flamboyant, a sort of exotic architectural style. In the same year, the first house mosque was also established in 1889, and it was this one in Liverpool. And this one really sort of established the typology for the mosque as a building that is created through alterations and adaptations. And it was built by or established by an English convert called Abdullah William Quilliam, and he bought the end of terrace house and converted it into a mosque and gathered around himself a community of local sort of English converts. And you can see on this left-hand picture here that he started to adapt the interior with the language of Islamic architecture that he had experienced in North Africa, which is where he traveled and then converted to Islam. And you can see that you start to get this combination of styles. You get the kind of Georgian terrace, and then you get the more sort of Islamized interior, and you start to get this kind of amalgamation or combination of different cultural references coming together in these buildings. And I think that's the thing that was really kind of characteristic about the mosque in Britain, is about the way in which it fuses different cultural influences. This is a mosque in Cardiff, and Cardiff was quite significant because it was where the sort of early Muslim communities were settling, in the port towns, Cardiff, Newcastle, East London. And this one I found really quite compelling when I first saw it, because again, it's the kind of introduction of a whole new language and a whole new cultural set of references being placed within a very traditional Victorian street. And this drawing is sort of one of the early ones of that scheme, which this one wasn't built, but this is one of the proposals that they were looking at. And what you start to see is that they had adapted the front part of the houses. You see this bottom part, that's the terraced houses, and they were sort of proposing to alter those, so to put assembly rooms, classrooms, and so on. And then in the back garden to build a new purpose-built mosque building. So again, it's that layering of the existing architecture and the new that is the kind of way in which this new kind of religious typology is emerging. And that photograph is when the building opened. So they still had the front wall of the houses, and they sort of put these windows, put grills in the windows. So you see the mashrabiyah that you see in the windows is a very kind of common characteristic of Islamic architecture, which starts to become introduced into the buildings here as well. This was a photograph of the building just before it was demolished in 1988. I'm racing through just to try and cover as much as possible. There's three broad typologies of mosques in Britain. There's houses that have been adapted and converted into mosques, so domestic spaces where you get front rooms which have been turned into prayer halls, and upstairs bedrooms which are turned into classrooms, and so on. And then you get, with those buildings, there's often some kind of embellishment that's placed onto them to try and identify them as Islamic architecture. And then there's other types of conversion, which could be all sorts of other buildings, cinemas, pubs, the mill, for example, in the case of Folkestone. And it's really any kind of building that the community can sort of get hold of and acquire, and then go through a series of adaptations. And then the purpose-built. And I found that the purpose-built, in terms of like the mosque that's built from the ground up, is something that it's the kind of minority of mosque buildings. So around 16, perhaps it's more now, % of buildings of mosques in this country are purpose-built. And often the purpose-built building will come after a long trajectory of alterations and adaptations that the mosque community has gone through with another building before then, sometimes redeveloping that to create a purpose-built building. So the purpose-built mosque doesn't just appear. It's the result of quite a long process of community endeavour. And what I'm going to do is I'll just show a few examples of some adapted mosques, just to give you a flavour of the different types of building and the different ways in which they get adapted. This is in Harrow, and this was a building that was turned into a mosque in the 1980s, and it was a semi-detached house, and it started off as one semi-detached house, and the local Pakistani Muslim community purchased the house, adapted it into the mosque, then bought the next one, and they kind of amalgamated these two houses together. And what you see starts happening is that you start knocking down walls, combining bedrooms to turn them into prayer halls, and bring in the kind of functionalities of this kind of religious practice. So one type of sort of architectural syntax, if you like, or architectural typology becomes overlaid with a whole new purpose. And with that one, they had to keep extending the building as the community and congregation grew, and eventually they sort of extended it, and then they kind of had to build over the garden with this structure and turned that into sort of an extended prayer hall just to accommodate the numbers of people that they had to get into it. So you can see there's this kind of sort of ad hoc process of quite iterative expansion that goes on, where the mosque architecture is very responsive to the needs of the community at the time. So through that, what I find really fascinating is that a new kind of architectural language emerges, a new kind of architectural language of faith emerges, which is one of improvisation and adaptation and sort of making do with things that you can find, and often they're built by members of the community and so on. This is the mihrab in Harrow Mosque, and mihrab is the kind of front piece of the mosque in the main prayer hall. And again, it's a very sort of interesting kind of, sort of structure, which was chosen by the committee member of the mosque who started it. And he sort of almost like self-designed it. So again, it's that sort of process of self-building which takes place. This is another quite a sort of quite quirky example in Brent. Not top left, that's not Brent, that's in Delhi. You probably guessed, but the bottom two photographs, the church is a congregational church in Brent, and that was bought by the local Muslim community and adapted. And what they did is the interior stayed largely sort of the same in terms of they were able to just clear the church hall and use it as the mosque space. But as you can see, the kind of domes that were then placed on the church tower and on the kind of new portico that they built were very kind of literally replicative of these domes of the mosque in Delhi, in the Jamia Masjid there. So what you see is that the people building the mosque, they're quite clearly sort of referencing memories and architecture and culture from places that they may have come from or places that they identify with as being of Muslim heritage and tradition. This is an interior shot. Some water of the mosque. So this would have been the kind of church hall. And another example, Brick Lane in East London. This was built as a Huguenot chapel in the 18th century, in 1742. It was a Protestant Huguenot chapel for about 100 years, and then it became a Methodist church, and then after that it became a synagogue. This is a photograph of it when it was a synagogue, and you can see the kind of pews, and there's the ark at the end, and the sort of galleries that were placed for for women. And this is the building once it had become a mosque. So this is the interior of the building as it is now. And you can see there's kind of adaptations that happen in the interior with each different kind of religious use that the building has. So it's a really fascinating example of a building, of a religious building that goes through a whole series of kind of layers of religious reuse, and each layer has a different architectural sort of language to it. This is a former pub in Old Kent Road, which is in South London. And that was adapted to a mosque and a Victorian pub. This was the kind of main prayer hall. So again, what you see in this one is that the kind of features of the dining hall in the pub were kind of reused and relayered and resignified to function as sort of mosque, to function as mosque architecture. And more calligraphy was placed into then geometric design. So again, another kind of layering, another language is placed over the top of the existing. And the two combine to create a new sort of visual aesthetic, which is very specific to, to the kind of condition of diaspora Muslims and the spaces that they're finding and refashioning. So from an architectural point of view, you start to get this kind of architectural language emerging through this sort of ad hoc process of adaptation and conversion, and self-built process of adaptation and conversion. Communities doing the work themselves and making the design decisions themselves. It's very much a kind of a vernacular. So Folkestone Mosque, as you know, it's a former mill, and I think we'll talk about that as we sort of have our discussion. These are the interior photographs, which you might have managed to visit and see them, but this is the upstairs prayer hall. And you may have noticed in mosque the way in which the carpet is arranged is often at quite sort of askew angles to the rest of the building. And that's because the only criteria that the mosque has is that the direction of prayer has to face Mecca. And that can be at any sort of geometry within the building. So the carpets are often at these kind of angles that look kind of oblique to to the kind of rectangularity of a building, which gives it a whole kind of new geometric layer as well. And this is the downstairs prayer hall here. And you may also have seen, as part of the project, which again we'll expand on, is the sort of redevelopment and expansion of this building. So that's kind of a kind of future idea that we're now working on with the mosque community. And these are drawings that we've prepared as part of this project, which are looking at the way in which the building could be extended and cater for the kind of increasing needs of the community. And the idea is that there's two phases. The first phase is to extend the building forward, and then the second phase is to potentially on the garage space, if that can be acquired. So that's on the ground floor. There'd be sort of prayer spaces, community rooms, and so on, and then ancillary spaces behind. And on the first floor, that would become a larger sort of prayer hall again, which can accommodate more sort of worshippers. And this is a proposal, a visualization of how that building would potentially look. And again, we'll talk about this, but the screen is derived from the pattern on the screen is derived from the workshop that we did with the children in the mosque. So they did drawings based on visiting the beach and picking up shells and seaweed and so on. And from those drawings, the sort of pattern has been developed from that. So although it sits within an overall kind of fairly traditionalist, geometric Islamic frame, the actual detail of the pattern is very specific to the community and to the place. And this is where we are now. And I should finish there.
Thanks, Shahed. That was an excellent overview in a very brief amount of time of the landscape, the historical and the cultural landscape of British mosques. And so that opens up our discussion very nicely. We'll have around less than an hour for our discussion, then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience. And there are so many layers to your relationships here, and they've gone back to 5 years ago, and there's so much that has emerged from it. And we're going to tease all of that out. But I want to go back to the beginning of this love affair and just say, like, who made the first move? How did this collaboration all begin? I mean, who swiped right, basically? So who would like to begin? HoyCheong.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I was invited here to start doing research for a project. The first conversation happened in Japan in 2015. At a conference with Louis, the director of the Folkestone Triennial. And I eventually made the journey here in 2016. And as we were exploring different aspects of Folkestone, the demography, the cultural landscape, the topography of the space of Folkestone, many issues sort of emerged. And one of the things that I found, which was interesting, was that there was quite a large Muslim community here. Although when I say large, it's like 1.something%, okay? And that was the largest ethnic and religious community here. And I was interested because I come from a Muslim country, and I grew up among Muslims, and I work with Muslims, and I'm very comfortable with it. So I asked around, and nobody seemed to know where the mosque was. And finally, through CRAN, the Can Refugee Network, I found out that there was actually a mosque. And because some of the asylum seekers and the refugees eventually, after being at CRAN, moved on for prayers in the Folkestone Mosque. So I walked to the Folkestone Mosque on Friday after Jum'ah, which is the Friday prayers. And the imam at that point was Imam Awal. And so I asked him, talked to him, and finally he made an arrangement for me to meet the committee. And that's when the conversation started. And we talked about the possibility of collaboration, which eventually resulted in 2 minarets in 1917 for the Folkestone Triennial. So I think of that as phase 1. And what we are doing now as phase 2, because through that process, some issues emerged. I think we had discussions. That time, I think there was a lot of problem with the plumbing. Remember that the winter and the plumbing was going off, and there was not enough space, and then there was no fire escape. So we realized that the mosque, because it's been around so long and it's built by a community which doesn't have very much money, really needed to have a facelift, needed to expand. And a few of the trustees suggested to Simon and myself, why don't we start the conversation for the next phase of the possibility of expanding the mosque? And then we started that conversation, and then we realized that we need an architect to be with us, so we invited Shahed to join us. So that's how the whole story began.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And Simon, I understand you've been to the mosque probably more than a lot of Muslims have in their lifetimes. And as a non-Muslim mosque punter, what has the learning experience been for you, and how important was it for you to get inside the heart of the community?
I think it's completely integral to the project.
We'll just.
Don't think my mic is on. Yeah, it was. I think the community engagement is completely integral to the whole project. I think without it, it just wouldn't have been possible. It wouldn't have rung. It wouldn't have rung true. But working with the community and getting to know the community, it's a community that, if I'm honest, day-to-day life in Folkestone, I'm not mixing with people like you, if I'm completely honest. So it took 4 or 5 years for us to kind of get to know each other and build up that trust. But it's been really rewarding.
Yeah, and that trust building is so important as well. And I'd love to come to you guys now. Actually, also to go back a bit and talk a bit more about the mosque and how it's evolved. Faruk, you told me that you've been involved with it since you were a child. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. In Arabic and in English, is translation of peace be upon you. It's nice to see everyone here today. Thank you for coming. First of all, I'm Bangladesh origin, and I came to this country when I was 7 years old. My father came to this country in the 60s, and we joined him in 70s. When I came to this country, we settled in a town called Keighley, which is in West Yorkshire. So, I grew up there, went to school there. And then when I left school, I studied in Islamic school. It was in Dewsbury. I studied there 2 years, learning about the Quran. I memorized the whole Quran actually in them 2 years, and then I started to learn how to translate the Quran as well. So I studied the Arabic course about 3 years in there. And then my brother in the 80s, he opened a restaurant in Dover. So I came to join him and just came to visit here. And then when I left, I had nothing in Yorkshire, to do. And so I thought I'll come, and my brother said, come and help me out working for me. So I came here in Dover in 1989, and then started to work for my brother. And gradually, after 10 years, I started my own business, which is an Indian takeaway, and I did that for 17 years. Now, going back to when I came in the 80s to join to work for my brother, when I came from Yorkshire, I was very, as you know, in Yorkshire, in Bradford, you see mosques in about 3-4 you see mosques in every other street, basically, because I had a mosque in my street where I was living. Just on top of the street, there was a huge mosque with the Pakistani community, and I went to the mosque locally, and I used to learn my studies there. So when I came here, there was very, very few Muslim community, and first of all, I found it really difficult to adjust because I couldn't, practice my religion because there was no mosques and everything, nothing here. So my uncle, my brother, and few elders at that time decided, look, we have nowhere to pray our Friday prayers and our Eid prayers. So we had to travel to, first of all, we had to travel to London every Friday, which is a quite distance away, and on Eid prayers as well. So we thought, look, there was just a handful of Muslim people, and they were all business owners, the boat restaurant and their families, that's all. And they decided, look, amongst Folkestone and Dover, there's not many Muslims, and the families that are here, the kids, you know, we can't read our prayers, we have to go all the way to Friday, so let's just look for a place. So we started to pray in a house, basically where I bought a business, and there was some room at the top of my business, so we started to pray there. And then the elders decided, look, we need to find a place so we can pray our congregational prayers. So the few of our elders in Folkestone, about 6, 7 of them got together and they bought a place, and the one we found in Folkestone, which is the mosque now. And that was a very run-down building we bought at the start, and then we did some work to it, and then we started to pray our congregational prayers in the mosque. Now, at the beginning, we started with about 30 people on Fridays doing the congregational prayers, because there was not many Muslims then. And now, till this day, today, we have in every congregation, like on Tuesday, we had Eid prayers. We had to do it in three congregational prayers, 3 Jamaats. And every congregational prayer consisted of 200 people. So from 30 to 200, every Friday we get 200 to 250 people praying at the mosque. That's where we are now.
That's a great story, and a real evolution that's happened there. And obviously when you were approached by HoyCheong, who did the minaret structure and made the mosque more visible, I mean, Shaheen, how did that feel? I mean, were you a bit nervous or apprehensive about the mosque being a bit more public in that way?
No, in actual fact, we welcomed Hoy with open arms. You know, it was something where we were shocked as well when we had an open day at the mosque. We found out a lot of non-Muslims that came to visit us. They didn't even know that there was a mosque in Folkestone, and we've been there 30 years. So it was by having this an emerald mosque there that lights up the sky. It was beautiful, you know, and just be able to welcome more people in, that we're engaging with them, a wider community. I think that's where it is, isn't it? You know, so that's what we was trying to do anyway, and hopefully moving forward, it's going to become a lot more open space for us.
Brilliant. And HoyCheong, I know you've grown up in Malaysia, and you know, that's where I think it's 2/3 of the country is Muslim, so it's majority, and then obviously your experiences here of the British Muslim community, as a minority, it is a very different experience. So how did you bring your experiences and your perspective into this relationship and this collaboration with this particular community?
It's quite interesting because in Malaysia, I am the minority. So, but coming here, you meet the Muslims who are the minorities. So I understand what it's like to be a minority. So it made the connection easier. Even though, I mean, I'm not practicing Muslim, I'm very familiar with Islam as a religion. In fact, I studied Arabic before, and I was supposed to go to Egypt to do Islamic studies, actually. But I didn't get a scholarship, so I didn't go. So I'm quite familiar with the religion, and I have a lot of Muslim friends. So being a minority, relating to a minority, became an easier task than a minority, non-Muslim, relating to a majority Muslim community. So that connection was there, and I understood how it was like being silent, or not being seen, or deprived. I mean, I'm just using these words quite, broadly, but working with the mosque, I mean, has given me an understanding of Islam in a very different way, because in Malaysia, Islam is the dominant religion, and it is always prominent. Here, it is seeking for an existence, seeking to be recognized. And I really empathize with that. And so I was hoping that working with the mosque and doing the minaret, finally, the public in Folkestone can begin to recognize that a Muslim community exists, and they must be seen as a community. That was one of the reasons why I really wanted to work with the community.
Thank you so much. And Shahed, we were talking earlier about the importance of art. And when it comes to art and mosques, sadly, we don't really see that many beautiful mosques in this country. And it's mostly uninspiring. And that's, because of many reasons, like, communities coming here and struggling just to find the prayer space. They're not really thinking about the aesthetics. So how do you now see the interface between faith and art now play out?
I think this project's really, it's very interesting on many levels, and it's kind of very multi-layered. I think one of the things that it does is it sort of shows the way in which an art project, an art installation, and engagement through art with the mosque can tell stories about the mosque, about the community, about things that they may be, issues that are important to them, their narratives and so on, about how those can become made visible and projected sort of, outwards. And like you're saying, there aren't many, if any. I mean, I can sort of think of a couple of other sort of art-related projects that have happened in mosques, but it's not something that happens much at all. I mean, there is a tradition of art in churches, for example. So I think, maybe this project can be used. I mean, I think it's fantastic that these guys were so embracing of the whole process and so kind of willing to take it on board and just willing to sort of, be open to it. And, maybe there's a way in which this could be used to show other mosques to say, what about doing something similar? And what is the story that you want to tell? And what would you want to say if you were sort of involved in a kind of an art piece like this? And then to collaboratively come up with something in the way that this piece was. And also involved in this piece, Simon and HoyCheong and have worked with others in Folkestone to create to carry out oral histories with members of the mosque community. So kind of really capturing the story of the mosque and the history of the mosque. Because these foundational stories that Faruk's saying, I think they're really important to capture. Because we're going to sort of forget how these buildings were established. And they were really, and I find it fascinating when I hear the sort of origin stories of mosques, that they are so kind of, based on just the very real kind of like drive and determination of individuals. And that's how we now have a new religious, a whole new part of Britain's religious history has been developed through people like Faruk and Shaheen, who basically just said, we need to do this and we just need to keep going. And, they work for decades tirelessly making these buildings happen. And I think it's an incredible achievement on that front. So,
if I may interrupt, voluntarily.
Yeah, I've gone off the point.
No, voluntarily.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add the word voluntary. I mean, they work.
Oh, I thought you were voluntarily interjecting. I didn't understand. No, but that was really, that's so true, and it's so interesting as well to see. And your presentation, to talk about this emergence of local culture and local, like the what you're talking about with the pebbles, using the pebbles and putting that into the mashrabiyah as well as the geometric design. So it is a hybrid, and that happens a lot with Islam across the world. Like, you can see that, visibly in like Moroccan mosques, in Chinese mosques, and now hopefully in British mosques. So it tells a story, and I think that's the most important thing, isn't it, about mosques?
I think so. I mean, hopefully
places of worship.
Yeah, I think what we tend to do as kind of diasporas is I think we tend to try, and maybe it's a kind of time thing, but we tend to try and sort of replicate things that we, Islamic history, culture, identities that we sort of identify with that come from overseas, essentially. We try to replicate all kinds of things, from sort of religious culture and whether it be clothing and so on and so on. And architecture. So what you get in a lot of mosques is the kind of replication of, kind of almost literal replication of tradition and of history. And I think, personally, I find that problematic because I think the history of the mosque in Britain is already in Britain. So we already have a 120-year history of the mosque in this country, which is made by these people. And that's what we should be, as designers, that's what we should be referencing, as well as the longer history, you know, as well as the kind of long tradition. And it's about how do you sort of create a kind of nuanced relationship between the two, but not to ignore what we already have here. That's my sort of soapbox.
Bringing it all together, that's really
sort
beautiful. That's amazing, that kind of creative reconciliation or something, a meeting point. Now, Simon and HoyCheong, you how did you view your responsibility really towards this? You know, as you know, as you said, you're not Muslim yourselves, but how did you feel that responsibility towards the community, and how did that play out in this project, this ongoing project?
I think we've always felt that the mosque have to be equal partners in the project. So, I mean, their input and our input, it's like there's been a real equality.
Has there hasn't been any challenges though? Have there been like what kind of challenges or blocks that have come up as well in that experience?
It's not always been easy. I think we all know. I mean, Faruk, Shaheen, Simon, and myself, and and Shahed. I said it before. Sometimes we think we are taking some steps forward, and then we realize actually we haven't taken a step forward yet. And with the pandemic, in the past 1.5 years, it really hasn't helped, because we make plans, and then suddenly we have to suspend everything. And when we come back later, we forget. People have changed. So for example, like we were in the process of acquiring the garage, and then the pandemic happened, and then the current owner or leaseholder of the garage changed his mind. And so there are all these obstacles. But I think what Simon was trying to say, that every time we try to move, we move forward, it always goes back to the community. And I think we all felt that the core of this project, whether it's artistic or architectural or vision must be from the mosque, must be from the community. So that's why all the things we do, we always refer back to the women, the men, the children. So even before we started working on the design with Shahed, everything went through the community. We had surveys, we had workshops, we had focus groups. We worked with the children, we worked with the women, we worked with the men, got feedback, and then only we started on the design. And yeah, I think it's been a big challenge. I think Faruk and Shaheen will be able to talk about the
I'd love to hear
as well.
more about this. I mean, how much input did you have? How creative was it? Were you kind of like, I don't like that design, can you get rid of that one?
No.
How was it all?
No. To be honest, every day is a challenge in the mosque. Because there's one mosque only in Folkestone, and you have many people from different countries, different nationalities, and so everyone's got different ideas and different things what they want to do. So we have challenges. I face challenges every day. My main focus is to keep everyone happy. I don't like making somebody unhappy, because everyone who comes to the mosque, you want to make them feel welcome. But there is challenges. Some people are not happy, but you have to understand that everyone's not going to be happy. But you have to move on. So the thing is, from many years, 10 years before, what we're doing now, it wasn't possible. Because our elders built the mosque, they bought it where it's come to, and then about 10 years ago, there was another brother of mine. He's moved to Milton Keynes, and he was quite involved with the mosque before I was, because I was very busy running my business. He was an imam, and he used to teach children, and he used to do the congregational prayers. And then afterwards, he had to move to Milton Keynes. After he moved, there was nobody else taking on the responsibility. There was a person coming from London every weekend to teach the kids how to learn the Arabic things and all that. So in the town, everyone was saying to say that, look, you're the most capable person of your knowledge in Islamic studies, and it's no one's here, so you have to take on the responsibility. So when I leased my business out and everything, I had more time in my hands. So I thought, look, the mosque is crying out for someone to pass my knowledge. I mean, I feel that my responsibility is the knowledge I know. I have to pass it on to the children next. Otherwise, I'll be answerable to Allah. So I took on the responsibility. I said, okay, let's just. Now I said to my elders, I said, we want to move forward. The way we want to move forward now, we have to change certain things, because at the start our elders was just praying their congregational prayers, and that's it. Nothing else was going on. No activities. No. That's why a lot of people didn't know where the mosque was. So I said to my elders, look, we have to change things, because we haven't got anybody, the things that should be going on in mosque, we're not doing that. So we said to our elders, look, you brought the mosque forward as much as you can, and you made a platform for us to follow. Thank you very much. But now let me move this thing with my own team.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant move, can I just say?
So what I did was some of the elders who started the mosque, they have passed away, and the trustees who are now, three of my uncles, they are the trustees, and they gave us the blessings. They said, look, we are behind you. With your ideas, you create a team, and then do what you have to do. So we got, me and Shaheen, is my closest friend, and we said, look, we have to do something. And then that's when I got a young team together. And I mean, because the community has grown, there's many Muslims now moved to Folkestone. And that's why I said, look, we have to have a team and see what we can. And then where we are on the process of doing things like, people didn't know where the mosque was. So, and this 5 years ago, when Hoy came, we was crying out for someone like Hoy and Shahed in this area to have their ideas, so we can move forward. And it was a blessings from Allah that people like them came and gave us the ideas and told us and got us on board with us. But my vision is, because since we started with about 7 8 years before Hoy came, 7 8 years ago, my plan was, so we wanted people to know where our mosque was. So when we started this project with Hoy and everything, everybody knew when the first minaret he made and the lighting and everything, people knew where there's a mosque in Folkestone. And then we started to people, it was an advertisement that there was a mosque. I mean, of 15 years, people didn't know where the mosque was. Only people who used to go to the mosque, they only knew. But other people, they didn't know. Non-Muslims and others, they didn't know where the mosque was. So when the Hoy started the project, the mosque was more popular. And people started to know, and then they wanted to come and see. And then schools started to phone me and asking if they can bring the children to the mosque. They want to know about Islamic religion. And also I go to some schools now. During the pandemic, I visited few schools. They wanted to know when it came to religious studies like Islamic. So I had to go and talk about our religion. And some classes, they come to our mosque to visit the mosque, tour of the mosque. And we have lots of activities now. Before, the women couldn't come to the mosque because of the facility. Now, last few years, we've got women's classes. I started 6 7 years ago, the classes for the children, which is going on at the moment. And so it's not finished yet, but there's more challenges, and we have a lot of work and hard work to do ahead. But with the help of people like Shahed and Hoy, we can only move forward.
Can I just add something? I don't want to whitewash. I think we shouldn't whitewash the whole process, so it was like a fairy tale. I think in the process of working together, there have been conflicts, has been difficult. I think the most recent one, which I find very interesting, and we really need to confront this kind of issue, is I think Faruk and Shaheen mentioned, look, there are members of the community who says, you know, why we are constantly talking, we are constantly doing research, but what is the outcome of this, you know, after so many years? So they said, but then Shaheen added that we must recognize they have a right to speak up. And, you know, not everybody is going to agree that we spend money doing this project. You know, some people would prefer to spend the money putting on new piping, for example, for the mosque, or having a new ablution area, rather than to spend it on so-called unnecessary aesthetic objects. But I think these kind of conversations that have evolved among us is very important, because only with trust can you bring up these issues. If not, you will end up fighting. So you know, the conversation was not easy, but I was so happy in a way that Faruk and Shaheen, you know, were able to say this to us and say we must deal with this. And because they represent the mosque, they must find some way of explaining this to the mosque. And for me, that was strangely encouraging.
My main challenge was, as Hoy, I just want to pick up on that. My main challenge was because when we started when he did the first project 2 years ago, the minaret, 2 minarets, after that, it was to people to know where the mosque and people to come and visit. Now, when he came to put this project up, there was questions, people arising, hang on a minute, what is the benefit we're getting from doing this, all this? Because we'd rather spend that money doing the mosque and doing extension and everything. I said, no, it's not that easy, as simple as you said. We have to, basically, what they're doing is putting our mosque on the map in Folkestone, because people don't know where the mosque is. And by doing that, we're engaging people, even non-Muslims coming to us, and we're engaging them to come and see the mosque. And we, as a community, we're a very small community, we need to engage with everyone. Even Muslim, non-Muslim, we all live together, and they want to know about our mosque, our religion. That's one of the main reasons we have to, do all this. So yeah, it's a lot of. I mean, there is a lot of challenges. Different people have different questions, and everybody. We have the right, and they. I mean, obviously, everybody donate, and mosque runs on donations. Everybody, and if they ask questions, we have to oblige to answer their. Yeah, questions. Yeah.
Shaheen, I feel like you were the look on your face during some of those responses. I feel like you need to contribute at this point.
Yeah, as Hoy said and Faruk said, it's been there's always challenges with mosques, and you know, historically, when mosques started, you know, in the early '60s, they were run by and they were governed by restaurant owners and elders, and it sort of remained that way until a new committee or a new generation take the reins and said we need to take this forward. And again, it was difficult for us, of course, because the elders have been here for 30 years, 40 years. They've established a mosque, and we're forever grateful to them for doing so. However, it comes to an end, whereas in their vision and our vision of taking it forward, it has to change. And I think this is where the stepping stones happen, and it's difficult for someone, or for the committee, should I say, for the trustees, and they've worked hard for this space for the community. But as the community has evolved, and you know, it was originally just for Bangladeshis and their staff and their families. Now it caters for everyone. You know, it caters for non-Bengalis and it caters for, should I say, non-Bangladeshi Muslims. There's Muslims all over. So, and with that comes obviously different responsibilities as well. So we can't, you know, the language we speak now, so it can't be Bengali in the mosque anymore. It has to be more open. It has to be English. So when Brother Faruk does his khutbahs, when he does his Friday sermons, before we used to just talk in Bengali, or the old imams used to do their sermons in Bengali. So it was, and it was easy because the community understood. But then slowly, as you have non-Bengalis coming to the mosque, they were like, well, why are you speaking? We don't understand Bengali. So, And that's a part of, you know, how a mosque has evolved, you know. And if you don't involve with the people in the community from where you live, then obviously you get left behind. And we're thankful to these guys that they've recognised where we are and how we want to move forward.
Yeah, it sounds like you really have understood all the nuances that go on in mosques and the mosque committee, the infamous mosque committee. And I noticed at the exhibition outside the mosque, there was one box that said space for women, and there was an audio. I was listening to the audio, and you know, in the UK, nearly a third of mosques don't have space for women. And it's a struggle for me personally. I have been turned away from mosques, or if there is a space, it's often a dungeon type basement. The ablution facilities are health and safety not regulated. It's been pretty, I've probably contracted something in some of those toilets. So I just wanted to know, you know, going forward with this mosque, I know that this mosque, it does accommodate women, and it has done from the beginning, I believe.
We do have facility for, we don't actually have a separate facility for the ladies, but in Ramadan we accommodate them. But that's the thing I don't want. I want specifically facilities for women where they can come and pray their prayers, they can relax, they can do their activities, whatever. That's the thing I want in our mosque. And because, as you said, there's a lot of mosques in this country haven't got this handful of mosques. The big mosques in London, they have got facilities for women, but most of them don't. And that's the thing. That's our first priority in our mosque, to have facilities for ladies. And that's the vision we put forward to Hoy and Shahed, and as you know, in his the designs he's done, we got specifically we've catered for the women to come and pray their prayers.
That's great. So yeah, Shahed, did you want to talk about that redevelopment? How important redevelopment is really to serve the community in its fullest sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think one pressure that a lot of mosques have faced is just kind of growth. So had to accommodate, and as Faruk was saying, just numbers. So it's kind of often there's kind of just this sheer pressure of, we've just got more and more people, and we just need to accommodate more and more people into this building.
Text, because I mean there's a reason why there are many mosques that don't have space for women. So there was also cultural factors, financial factors.
The reason as to why they don't necessarily. Yeah, I think my wife's going to say something about this, I'm sure. But
I'll give her the mic in the Q&A for sure.
Yeah, it's when you speak to mosques, like I've sort of been up and down the country talking to mosques for my research, and a lot of people will say we don't have the space. So they'll say, okay, we only have space that we can accommodate men, and we don't have any sort of additional space to accommodate women, but we can women come in on specific times and specific days. Some people will, I mean, I haven't heard this here in the UK, to be honest, but some people will say that women shouldn't come to the mosque. There is a kind of line of thinking that people will say that. I mean, these guys will be able to sort of elucidate more on the kind of, religious opinions about
Simon probably knows all about that now,
yeah, I'm sure Simon knows all about that as well. Yeah.
They weren't built with that in mind.
It's only recently that they've now accommodated, and sisters demanding that we want to go to a mosque.
And there was a lot of the men who were here first, and then they established those prayer spaces. But we still have that legacy that now is with us today, and it doesn't serve this community
I
now.
think it's, exactly. I mean, I think it's a kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, or kind of, because I think what happens is that, often what you find is women are very involved in fundraising for mosques. So when mosques are fundraising, women raise a huge amount of money for them. I don't know whether
absolutely.
With gold jewelry and...
Yeah. To be honest, when you go, when there's a time in Ramadan, especially month of Ramadan, when you go to ask donations, it's the women who will donate more than men.
And I mean, also we, women bring I think a whole different sort of dynamic as well to kind of mosque activities and so on. And I think when you've just got an organisation which is just men, it can be a bit flat, to be honest. But you know, to have this kind of more multi-dimensional sets of activities, or often, I suppose, you know, if women come, then families come more potentially. Families can come together, these kind of things. And it can become much more a space where the whole community, as families, can engage. And I think that's probably really something, you know, I'm not sort of, you know, it's not necessarily up to me to say, because I'm not the one that runs mosques, but that's what I would sort of ideally like to see, personally, yeah.
Thank you. And Simon, I just want you're the one that built this installation, the lantern installation, with your bare hands, haven't you? You're the one who's got up there and risked your life to build it. So what were the technical considerations for that? And also, could you give us an insight into, you know, a master artist at work, and, you know, how it feels when you're creating your installation and your masterpiece?
Well, Shahed, HoyCheong and myself, along with the contribution of the children from the madrasa class. So I guess we built it on paper together, designed it in you know, over the last 2 years. But yeah,
You got up there and built it.
it's been backbreaking.
Yeah, you seemed exhausted today. You said that your mind's gone a bit.
Actually, the best thing about building it was the insight that I was getting from Ford Road South, being there all day long, hearing people's opinions, hearing people's comments.
Just before the
No expose.
Eid was on Tuesday. On Monday morning, I saw him 8 o'clock until Tuesday morning 1 o'clock. He was on that the scaffolding doing the whole day. He was there till 1 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday morning. He was there. Yes, he was doing all this to finish it off.
Wow. That definitely deserves a round of applause.
But yeah, the comments from passers-by and other residents of Ford Road South has been phenomenally positive. Like, I haven't heard a negative comment whatsoever.
And it's Noor, isn't it? So it's called Noor, the installation.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was the thinking behind?
Sorry, I just want to say something before you, just about this process of building. So Simon's kind of playing it down, but as an architect, there's always a gap between designing and what gets built. And often sort of, you know, the person who's built, I mean, Simon's an artist anyway, but the person who builds, even if it's just, you know, I say just, but if it's a contractor can't build something decent unless that contractor has something else going on in his mind, but understanding the intention of a piece and so on. And I think the fact that the thing, you know, the installation works and, you know, looks so effective is, you know, the actual physicality of it is really down to the person who builds it. You can't, like I often say to clients, forget contracts, forget what's written on your contract. Your building will get built. It's all going to come down to that person who's building it. And I think that's what Simon has done, really. So it's not just like, he's kind of playing it down, but it's really a sort of an act of sort of creation in itself. So
He's being typically humble Muslim, isn't he?
No, he has.
Humility. But, you know, it is extraordinary. And it's also, that there is an element to it that seems incomplete. So could you just talk us through that kind of idea and why you thought about doing it in that way?
That kind of refers back to the expansion of the mosque. That's an ongoing thing and probably a never-ending thing. So each generation's going to change the mosque that they inherit. And
it's kind of a symbol of that ongoing dialogue.
And you know, in Islam, you're constantly learning. So it's the you know, your faith is never done. It's on that theme.
Yeah, I know. It's really versed. It's amazing. No, thank you so much. Honestly, that it is extraordinary, and the exhibition outside is wonderful. Now, what is going to happen next? What about the future plans? Yeah, what's happening going forward for all of you?
Well, Hoy and Shahed, they have designed, Shahed has designed extension to our mosque. which I showed you earlier, and that's our main target now, to raise the funds to have the extension done. Because at the moment, the congregation is on Fridays, we don't have space. We have to have two congregation, and we don't have space. And the main thing is we want the ladies to, we want to accommodate ladies to come and pray as well. So that's the thing in our mind. Shahed has he's designed our extension, and that's our main target now, to do the extension and raise funds for make the extension. That's the next target we want to finish.
I mean, there is the small matter of planning permission. So hopefully somebody in the audience can twist some arms in the planning department. But that's the sort of immediate next stage, and I think we sort of hope to sort of approach planning in the next, imminently as the next port of call, really.
I mean, so that is supposed to be the phase 3 of this project. Phase 1 was the coming of age, as you might call it. Phase 2, moving forward and making the plans. And phase 3, turning the plans into a reality, the realization of the plans, the mosque. And that is the most difficult but fun part, I suppose, to finally see the mosque expanded.
A lot of people don't realize that everything takes time and effort. And what goes behind the scene, a lot of people don't realize that. And the people who work in behind the scene, the people think they want it overnight. They want quick, the mosque, you made the extensions, or the mosque should be ready next year. The extension should be ready next year. It doesn't happen like that. It takes time and effort. And then on top of that, you have to raise funds to do it as well. But everything takes patience, time, and hard work. And that's what we are all in there to put our effort in, our ideas in. And the team I put together as well, they're all willing to do that. And we will, inshallah, within next 2 to 3 years, we'll have the extension ready to go.
Okay, Shaheen, you're just going to add something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like most mosques as well, our mosque has outgrown its purpose. It's outgrown because of the amount of people that now come. So we need a bigger space. And that's why, to accommodate that, and it's probably inherent of a lot of mosques that they were built in the early 50s, 60s, 70s, and now they don't have enough room to facilitate all the people, or the bigger community as a whole. So that was it.
Our mosque is also just a center of, because when people come from France, Germany, the musafirs, they want to pray the salah, travelers, they want to come and pray, and the next nearest is London. Now they got Folkestone, the stopgap.
It's a stopping point. We have that.
Some people come from north. Some people come from north, and they say, we got ferry to catch tomorrow, can we stay over? Sometimes we do let them stay over. That's another.
Sorry, Simon, were you going to say something? Or?
No, I think
no.
I think we've seen it, right? Many times.
Yeah, we see it all the time.
Yeah, you see that.
People walking past.
You give them the drinks and the tea, don't you?
They'll ask us why is the mosque locked. I said, the imam has gone shopping. And are you from here? They said, you're not from here.
Can you talk into your microphone?
Yeah, so they just want to pray, and they're not from town. And sometimes you can't let them in because imam has gone out.
So it's a hub. It's a real hub then. Yeah, that's great.
Just to cut on that point about what happens next, I think one of the things, like through speaking with HoyCheong and like we've spoken the last few days about everything, I suppose, and one of the things that struck me is, HoyCheong was talking about the way in which, about the role of the artist in the community and the role of the artist working with the community, and I think that's something we can hopefully talk about as well, especially in relation to the Triennial, and hopefully we can get Lewis involved in a conversation about that. But also the idea that I think from HoyCheong's point of view, I don't want to speak for HoyCheong because he's right here, but you're going to
do it anyway. Go on.
Just the idea that this started with his work back in 2015, 16, 17. He kind of identified the site, contacted the community, established these relationships, made the connections, and all of these kind of stages that have happened over a whole long period of time. And as you say, you know, there's these kind of 3 phases. And you know, HoyCheong was saying to me that at some point he needs to leave. Like he needs to kind of go carry on and do the next thing and so on.
He's like Mary Poppins. I'm just really...
But, you know, it's really, there's something beautiful about, to me, there's something beautiful about the fact that now there is this future that the mosque has that, sure, it would have had one way or another. They would have worked out their own future. But I think there's something about the path that it has taken and where it is at this point in time, which is really quite beautiful, actually. And I think that's down to his work, I think.
I mean, I don't know whether it's beautiful, but I think one of the reasons why I think this project will succeed is right from the beginning. I think Simon and I discussed it towards the end of the first part, that it must be him, it cannot be me. Remember, we talked about that. There must be a local, it must be the mosque, it must be the mosque community, there must be a local in Folkestone working with them, and then eventually the architect should be someone local, so that parachuter like me, who comes from Malaysia, eventually will have to fade out, and the locals will have to move this forward, I think. In any community projects, the people who live there, the people who work there, must take over the project, not the person who might have started it.
Thank you. Like what?
A superhero.
Like a superhero. Yeah, I said Mary Poppins. I
Yeah,
think she's
I
a
think
superhero.
I know. Hoy is a superhero. Basically, when our project and the vision we have after this, when it's fulfilled, and when we build the extension, and when the way we want to be, I think we'll make a statue of HoyCheong in front of the mosque. Yeah, Shaheen.
It's a great idea. Well, you have all given it wings, so thank you so much for that discussion. I'm going to now open it up to the floor for any Q&A. We do have a roving mic that is a socially distanced roving mic, so it's a really long, extended stick. So if anyone has a question, please just pop your hand up and we'll come to you. There's a lady here on the left.
Oh, hello. I'm just interested in 2 things. Thank you, fantastic conversation. I'm interested in Hoy and Simon and whether or how their artistic practice has been changed over the years of doing this project, and how that might change things for the future. And also I'm interested in the connection between the community and the mosque, and it being an artistic work that is being made. I know there have been the workshops, and I'm just interested in if you've noticed any change in people's opinions of maybe what art might be or how they might engage in art themselves.
Excellent questions. Who would like to begin? We're all pointing at you, Simon, I think. You better put your fruit pastels down and answer the question.
It's changed my practice massively. I'm never my practice has not involved community engagement before. It's been a long, steep learning curve. But luckily, we've had the privilege of 5 years. Which would
more for you and more for Simon. Yeah, for me, I think like what Simon says is the privilege of 5 years. Working in communities can be very easy if you do a one-week project, or sometimes artists who work in communities do a one-day project, or at most, an artist residency which does a 3-month project. But I think when we started this project, we had wanted to make this a long-term project. And Louis was sitting there, was kind enough and took risks for this project, because very few people will want to sponsor or fund a project that goes over 5-6 years, especially an art organization. So I think Creative Foundation really took risks through Louis to allow us to explore. I mean, he had no idea whether we will succeed or we can come up with anything. I mean, how do you fund community engagement, which fluctuates all the time?
Yeah, So yeah, that was a shout out to you, Lewis. I mean, would you like to actually come in and just speak a little bit about what we were talking about earlier? It was something really, really valuable. Where have you gone, Joanna? There you are. It would be nice to just hear a few words from you about the collaboration between the community and the importance between the community and the creativity.
In making this exhibition, this triennial, and the previous couple of trials, I mean, I have a working method, which is to try to find a particular energy in the town, and that means it's about people. It has to start with people and what people think and what interests them, what concerns them, and it might be anything. It might be history. It might be a current problem of some kind. It might, but because all the art that we commission is outdoors, the artwork has to speak to its context, and because the context of the town is very, very strong. It's much stronger than any artwork could ever be. You know, the street and buildings and so on are all carry an enormous baggage of history and presence, and it's very hard for artworks to make themselves heard in that context, unless the artwork is saying the same thing as the context. So if I can fix on a context, like say, oh, everybody thinks we need new lights in the high street. So that's what I regard that as an opportunity for an artist to come in and work with the existing energy that wants lights in the high street, and the artist can then. I mean, that's a kind of very straightforward and stupid example, but that illustrates what is possible for an artist. Because if an artist is just a lonely voice, which has no context and no support existing in the community before, the artwork won't mean anything. It won't even happen, probably. So it's essential for the curator, that's me, to research what the possibilities are, and or help the artist research what the possibilities are, but make sure that there is a cultural energy into which the art process is fitting. And then with luck, you get an artwork that carries meaning for its context and can add to the meaning of the context, as well as the context adding meaning to the artwork. And I think that's what we've got here, a wonderful example of the energy that starts in the mosque being expressed through the artwork, and the artwork drawing attention to the energy in the mosque. So it's a fantastic example of the process which I always look for.
Thank you. That was eloquently and beautifully put. Oh, that was excellent. Thank you so much. There's a question on the far right. Oh, I keep saying that. My far right.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment and a question, but more to do with the architecture. I don't. In your presentation, I don't think you meant it, but the way I read that was, if you were able to achieve the facade you showed, I don't mean facade, that strikes me as that would be two things. It would be a kind of culmination of your story, because it didn't look to me like a converted building. And I think in that street, it would be a huge enhancement of the streetscape. I think it's really a powerful image. That's a comment I would make. And the question I had, you part answered it, because I wanted to know how you would deal with the orientation to Mecca. You answered that by the way the carpets are in. You answered it because on your maps, I think I saw North and Mecca. At least I think that's what this place was. But I wonder whether whether it's important the whole building can be oriented to Mecca, and whether is that intrinsically important, or is that just you just have to manage with what you get?
Yeah, I think it's preferable, because it just means that you can have just from an architectural point of view, it's preferable because the building would work better, it'd be more efficient, it'll be a sort of a more a sort of a nicer space to be in, let's say, if you know the kind of geometry of the building is formalized around the direction of the prayer. And I think when you're building a new mosque on a sort of larger site, or where it's possible, then that's what you try and do. But as you're saying, with the number of the sites that we work with here, they're sort of existing sites and quite constrained. So often you're working within, you have to work within the given parameters and try and make the most out of the space that you've got. And often that does end up with sort of a direction of prayer being at an angle or a skew angle to the rest of the building. So yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, you would sort of, the geometry would organise the form of the building, or the plan of the building.
Would you be able to achieve that if within, say, the building you're looking at, that you could internally construct the main prayer area oriented to, or kind of indicate it in the actual internal architecture?
Yeah, you can. But what happens is, what I find is that often mosques are so keen to maximise this floor space that you just have to sort of expand the floor right to the kind of perimeters that you've got. Whereas if you sort of created another space within, you're sort of ending up losing the sort of the space. But you're right. There are other ways of sort of indicating the direction, not just on carpet, but maybe in sort of other forms of decoration or kind of.
Can I just collaborate on that, Shahed, on the? I think the brother was talking about facing of what the Mecca is that. So basically, I think some mosques are purposely built from scratch, and they build the mosque according to the facing the Mecca. They build it facing it that way. Some mosques, we say, for instance, when we buy property, then we have to find where the prayer Qibla is faced, and that's the way the mosque will be directed to pray, where we're going to build the mimbar. But some mosques are built, when they are purposely built, they are built facing the Mecca. Tell you a story. As you know, before we used to face Mecca, all the Muslims were facing the Masjid Aqsa in Jerusalem. We used to pray our prayers that was the first mosque that we was praying towards, not the Kaaba in Mecca. We was praying, thousands of years ago, they were facing Masjid al-Aqsa. And then when Prophet Muhammad time, he was on a journey, and then the Jibreel came, and he stopped off in a village in Mecca, just outside Mecca, and he was ordered by Allah to pray towards Mecca, the Kaaba. And where he prayed at that time, from the space he was, the town it was in the middle of a desert, he prayed towards the Kaaba at that time from there. And that mosque there was a mosque built there, and this mosque is called now Masjid Qiblatain, which is just based outside Mecca, and the mosque is till this day is called Masjid Qiblatain. In Qiblatain in Arabic means facing towards the Kaaba. So we face from that. That's the day. From that day, everyone has been ordered to pray towards Mecca. The two Qiblas, yeah, that's it.
I think we have time, for another question. Yeah, from your end. So, Joanne, you're doing all this hard work, going everywhere.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Great conversation. Given that this is all about plot and site and the location and building on that location, it's a bit of a sacrilegious question. But I just wonder, is one possibility, particularly hearing about the capacity issues of having to do the congregation 3 times. Could it be in a different place? Could the mosque move? Could it be rebuilt from the beginning? And then, if that was the case, what would this learning from this project, how would that feed into it? And I suppose part of what's behind my question is what I didn't really hear about is the mill and the original place that the mosque was built on and how important that is or isn't, and just kind of the longer history. It's great to hear about the more recent history of the mosque, but just, 2 questions really. Could it be somewhere else? And also, what about the mill then? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I can start, then Shahed can. First, Shaheen can collaborate. We would be delighted and to find another place, or would be, preferably if we can find a land. I think a few of our trustees, there was approaching, and they were searching for a land where we can find a bigger land so we can build a mosque purposely built mosque. The situation here is difficult because, first of all, if we find the land, it's the permission we have to get from the council, and we have tried before, haven't we, Shah? And we was refused to build anything elsewhere. There was a few other people who tried to, even now we are searching. If we find the land somewhere, then we can have a purposely built. Obviously, it comes with the cost. It's more funding. We need funding. But if we do find somewhere, and if we are given permission to build something, we would be delighted to. But at the moment, our hands are tied. So, do you want to comment on that? Anything on that?
Just with about moving the mosque, it's going to be just being able to find the space to be able to accommodate 200, 300, 400 worshippers at any given point on a Friday. Folkestone is small in itself, so we did have one. There was discussion with the old waterworks up by the viaduct. I mean, that would have been perfect because it's in private grounds. There'll be enough space. So again, parking's a problem. Again, outside any mosque in the UK, so. Trying to find a space big enough to accommodate a purpose-built mosque would be perfect for us, and it would probably be a lot cheaper as well than trying to convert a house. That's and then again, we're quite restrictive in with space in Folkestone. So and again, trying to gain permission from the council if we already have a prayer space, although it's tight, it's trying to get the permission again. And for them to be able to validate us having another space to pray in.
I mean, at the moment, we are finding very difficult to pray here because of the space. We haven't got the facilities we want, as I discussed earlier before, with the ladies, the classes for the children, and other activities as well. We want to have. We got vision in mind, but it's just to finding a place and getting permission for it too, because at the moment we would love to have a bigger space. Have we get? I mean, we can find space, but it's just that getting the permission from the authorities is the biggest challenge. It's a big challenge for us.
And can someone just briefly address about the mill, and then we're going to wrap up after that. About the original structure of the mill, what's going to happen? Did you say what? Yeah, I didn't hear much about the mill. Yeah, like so that when it was built and
how important that is for that location.
And yeah.
Maybe Simon thinks you've done.
Yeah, go Simon.
A lot about that.
I think at one point in time it was the only building in that whole area, and it was obviously serving such an important function for Folkestone. When was it built? Can you remember? Is that 1850s? Yeah.
Can I also the building we have at the moment? It's not even ours as well. It's a lease, and it's 99 years lease. And the things we want to do, like build on top of it, and the landlord, he's very quiet, laid back, and he is not very communicative towards it. So we find very hard challenges at the moment That's why I said if we found a space where we can have a bigger space to pray, we would be really delighted to do so. At the moment, we are very restricted in things. That's why we can't do things we want to do.
Let's hope that you will be able to do things that you want to do.
Yeah.
Another panel discussion on that.
And that will be another one, yeah, hopefully in the next few years. So thank you so much for all your questions, and thanks for being such a great audience, so attentive. I know it's really hot and stuffy in here, but you've been great. And please just join me in thanking Shahed, HoyCheong, Simon, Shaheen, and Faruk for their incredible discussion.
Please help me thank Remona for chairing it so well. Thank you very much. We've got other talks coming up, so I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Let's go out in the fresh air now.
Yeah.